Welcome to Timber&Terra. I'm Glenn. The project for today is to fix that, which is my push plate, which is a modified snow blade for like a four-wheeler side-by-side, which I cut short. Added this, added a vise, which I use for sharpening my chainsaw. And this just works well to push logs. But how that happened was last year when I was clearing a road in the woods. I wanted to push a rock out of the way. And the rock didn't want to move, so it bent that. So my plan is to bend that back. So it's a little bit white on the ground. Actually, today is supposed to be our first significant snowstorm of the year. This is actually Thanksgiving. So I'm saying like 2 to 6 inches. And one thing I haven't done yet is got my plow truck out. I should have done that earlier. You notice the dogs and myself are practicing safe outdoors wear because it's still hunting season and none of us want to get shot. So actually I just want to get this out of the way and done, and if there's any issues, give me a little bit of time to fix it before I have to plow snow. This early in the season, if I can avoid plowing snow, I like to. I'll just pack it in generally until we hit mid-December. Snow is likely to melt before, it's not going to stick around, it'll just melt. So if we can make our way around the driveway without plowing, I'll do that. This has not started all summer long. Not a bad cold start from 8 months of sitting idle here. So that's a 1989. It's a 7.3 liter diesel. Generally I've had pretty good luck with it. It's not really been a powerhouse. You know, back when I had a dump body on it, it was not the most powerful thing in the world. For years I did have two issues with it. One is in cold weather it didn't like to crank over. The battery would drain quickly. I realized I needed to connect a separate ground from the alternator to the frame because for whatever reason just the mounting of the alternator was not providing enough contact or continuity. That made the charging system a lot better. And the other was a fuel leak which I couldn't find, so I ended up putting in an electronic fuel pump to replace the mechanical one. And what that did is that pressurized the system enough, and it was a tiny little O-ring, I think, in a heating element in the fuel filter. Because what would happen if you left it sitting for a day or two, it would not start. It would sort of suck in air. Just the natural gravity would drain the fuel out, and it would allow air to enter. And that was causing an issue with it starting. So now the issue is getting it out. I don't think it'll be an issue. I still have chains on the back. A little bit of a mud hole here, but not bad. My grand plan is to figure out how to attach a chain here. I'm going to put the excavator blade on here, and then with the chain on here, lift it up with a boom. I hope that bends it mostly into shape. Doesn't have to be perfect. I did notice, and we won't be able to see it till I tip it back up, is there is a little bit of a bow in the mounting plate, this orange plate here, which makes it a bit of a challenge to put these pins in on the universal skid steer attach. But it does go in, it just goes in harder than I'd like. So hopefully at the same time I can sort of bend that back a bit. You can see here, I hope you can see that really sort of crimpled what used to be a flat piece of steel on the edge of this blade. Crimpled it up. I welded this, and it looks like that might have cracked. Well, maybe, no, I think it did not. That's just the edge of the metal. But it took this cutting edge, which is actually hardened steel, and really twisted it. I guess I didn't realize I could do that much of a number. My tractor had chains on it at the time, but I just didn't realize I was pushing it that hard to fold this under like that. So I have this old piece of 3/8 chain. I thought I do have a grab hook, a weldable grab hook, but why waste that? Just soon waste this. This is an interesting, it must be it's a logging type slip hook. I don't know where I got this, but what I thought I'd do is probably just sacrifice this one link. Weld it here, and then the thought is to wrap it around like this and just pull it upward. So I have what's left of a 6011 rod. I like 6011 rods, particularly for stuff like this because there's no prep work. They call it a farmer rod, I think, because it literally can weld through anything. So I just welded it in 3 spots. That should be fine. Particularly wrapping it around like this. If I was to pull it straight up like this, it's more likely that the welds would bust than wrapping it around like that. Well, that's not working. You can see it's actually bending that tube there that holds the vise. So the vise is off the ground enough, it's digging in a little bit, but it's The weight's not on the vise, the weight's on these 4x4s. It's not going to bend back as easy as I thought it would, so I think because it's not easy to go back in the garage and come back out here. It just sucks up a lot of time. So what I think I will probably do is try to strategically cut some places and just bend it back by hand and then re-weld it and reinforce it. This is probably providing a lot of resistance too. I'll just cut that out completely and fish a plate in there to replace it. So this looks like I mean, some of it was going to be a shop job anyhow as far as reinforcing it, but it looks like the entire fix will be a shop job now. Well, back in the shop here. Boy, where to begin? There's so many places. But the first thing I'm going to do is this little wrinkle here. I'm just going to cut that out. Well, with that piece gone, there are two beefier pieces that are resisting or will resist me bending it, just like it did with the excavator. That is this piece, which is cutting edge, and that is hardened. I remember that because when I had to cut it from the longer blade to make this as short or as narrow as it is, that was a tough piece of metal. The other one is this angle iron piece under here. And of course, when I put this together, this had been, I think, bolted on, and I welded it. I welded it not completely solid, but darn close. I think there's a spot here where I can, if I can cut or grind through this. That has doesn't have a weld up here, and it does not have a weld under here either. Again, I'm not looking for perfection. This is just a log pusher, but I do need to get this toe back up so it's sort of equal with that. So that is cut all the way through. Yeah, so what's happening is this is just separating. This was not welded there, and it's just lifting the whole thing up, bend and all. So what I'm going to have to do is tack that down so that can't come up. So I'm wondering if just repositioning where this jack rests, if that might be able to push it down. I'm not that hopeful, but easy enough to set up, so we'll try. Force this down, then weld it, and then try this again. Oh yeah. Well, I burned a hole through that piece of, I don't know, it might be 14, 16 gauge. I need these to be in line, that and that, so I'm not quite there, but working well. Maybe I'll try to bend this back separately. Is the only thing that needs to bend is really this thin sheet metal, like I said, maybe 14 gauge or so. So I think I'll heat this up sort of right along what looks to be this crease and find a pipe and maybe just bend it by hand. So I just ground that off to minimize the smoke and flames that I'll get when I heat this up to bend it. Well, that's not going to work. I'm guessing this angle iron is providing too much resistance. Well, it's better, but it's not quite there. Now it's sort of twisted this way. I really thought this was going to be a lot easier. Well, sort of in an unexpected revelation, after I cut this, I said, well, I'll see if I can bend this back this way, because it was tilted sort of that way. And not expecting really it to move, just sort of testing things out, I put the adjustable wrench on here and lifted it up, and I almost think maybe I busted that little bit that might have been connected there, but it just, now I can almost bend it without the adjustable wrench. So this basically is in the spot that it needs to be. So now the challenge is trying to right this at least just a little bit to get it up near here where I can at least weld it Like I said, I'm obviously not after anything that looks fancy, but just needs to be functional. So I think I mentioned it, but this angle iron now is completely cut off. I did grind this weld out, so and I stuck a chisel in there, separated this, so now the cutting edge is separate from here. So what I'm thinking I want to do, I think this will bend relatively easily. I may give it a little heat, but to sort of try to bend it at a hinge point like right there. I think I'll heat that along there. This should bring the, hopefully it'll bring the angle iron up a little bit if I can move this that way, and it'll separate here and leave this portion of the angle iron where it is. So I thought that this was disconnected, but it was not. So between the multi-purpose tool, that vibrating tool, my grinder, my reciprocating saw, it is a hard area to get into, just out of reach of the grinder. But I think that's finally severed. So I'm going to try to heat this up again, that same spot, and we'll see if I have any better luck. Well, I think I've given up on trying to heat this and bend it, at least this cutting edge. It's just either too thick, or it's the kind of material that it is. It doesn't bend easily when heated, so I'm just going to cut this and they'll bend it after I've cut it. Just a lot of metal attached to each other. Well, I'm sure you figured out by now that this is going to be a significant hack job. But short of starting from scratch, literally, I don't think there's much I can do about it. I'm just not willing to put in the who knows how many countless hours to, cut all those welds and try to put things back together where they belong. The issue, this is how it's supposed to set, and when I actually first made it, that tine over there would be sitting level on the floor, but it's not. So that has been pushed down. That also has a similar wrinkle right there to that piece that was sort of a strong back to the plow, as on this side, just not nearly as much. So it's had the same tendency, and I probably hit that with a rock, maybe just not as hard as this one. But anyhow, I think what I'm going to do now, this basically is all loose. The only thing holding it on is this. So what I think I'm going to do is cut that off, position this as best I can so it matches that fork or tine. And then use some scrap metal just to bridge in what's going to be significant gaps and overlaps. And with this here, I'm just going to do the best I can to sort of make it relatively smooth but it's not going to look a whole lot better than it does now. In fact, it might even look worse. But it'll be functional. Well, see, it doesn't look bad from this angle. You have to get this angle really to see how bad it is. So I have positioned it so that these are touching, so it's sort of flat on the ground, so the skid steer attach is flat as well as both of the tips touching. The angle of these may not be exactly the same, but that's fine. So I've tacked this in place to get it where I want. It is laughable. So this I think is it's not 3/8, it's 1/4 inch, I think. So this is going to be my first of several hack plates, I guess I'll call them. So I'm just going to weld this into place. Any small gaps like that, I'll just fill in as best I can. So I'm going to initially weld this with 6011. There may be some areas where I go over it with 7018, which is a little bit stronger rod, a little bit more resistant to wear. But this really is not going to see wear. It really shouldn't ever see dirt. I should have known better. It really should just see logs, bark, and maybe a little bit of topsoil as I dig in to grab a log. Well, that's the first time I had tried that technique. I mean, there's still some holes in there, but well, I don't have any left. It does seem to be a decent use of those ends. They're going to be tossed out anyhow, and I was thinking, well, I could maybe, when I cut a piece off of here to fix the next hack plate, then I'd use a piece of that metal as filler, but and I said, well, I have these ends. I think I'd seen that on either YouTube Reels or YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels or something like that, using welding rod as sort of an extra filler rod. Well, with that hack plate in position, this is the next one. Little parallelogram action going on here. And that should fit in there actually kind of nicely. Well, use that technique again. It seemed to work well. There's still a little bit of a hole there I got to fill in. I figured I'd let this cool off a bit and then re-weld that, same as that hole there. But particularly since this is pretty thin metal, I think having that extra rod laying there helped. There was a bit of a gap there, maybe 1/8, maybe 3/16 of an inch. Alright, with the other cosmetic plate in place, I think I want to tackle this. This is only attached, this cutting edge is only attached right there in that little bit of weld. So I think what I'm going to do is cut this way instead of trying to heat this up and bend it, because I've had such good luck with that. I think I'll forego that. I don't want to press my luck. Cut this and move it up where it needs to be. Weld it, weld it. Who needs heat? Who needs glowing metal? This thing is going to be a cosmetic marvel. Now all I have is just this slight misalignment that you probably would not see from anything closer than 20 feet. I will call that good enough. Now that all the cosmetic stuff has been completed, mighty fine I must say, I want to look towards reinforcement. So when I built this, I put these two things here, thinking these side plates were going to be enough, and that was not the case. What I should have done is put one of these on each edge. So I guess better late than never. They're going to be different sizes now because this is probably closer to the original distance and this is pushed back that way. I am not about to try to bend this back up. But that will have to wait for another day. My 6011 rod container is empty, so I need to replenish that. And it's a good time to stop for the day. Pick this up again tomorrow. So it is the next day, and I do have some welding rods, although we're not going to be welding here for a bit. So the next thing I want to do to this is, before I put the reinforcements on these ends, I want to flatten this out. Hopefully you can see here. This is bent quite a bit, and this is where it's difficult to stick the pins in on the skid steer quick attach. So if I'm pushing down on this side, you probably can't even see the edge of that. So that is about an inch. So there's about a ½ inch flex on each side, at least to the ends, ends of this angle iron. If you go to the ends of the attachment itself, it's maybe a bit more. So this is snug up. I got my my Monster 30-ton, just so I don't have to work too hard. And it has a larger base, so that I'm not sort of just denting the center in with a smaller base. Well, it's moving. I can't tell in slow motion what exactly is moving, what's bending, if this is flexing, if something under there is moving. I'll be able to see that when I review the footage. Now we actually have a gap in there, so this probably is sort of bowl shaping, being bent down a little bit between these two supports. But that's fine. I mean, it just needs to be flatter so it can more easily go under the tractor. Well, we did something, because this cylinder was extended a lot less with the chain taut than it is now. So I think holding it flat over here, there was about an inch. Now it's probably 3/4 of an inch. So what I think I'll do is I'll take up a link or two, move this down, and bend it back up again. So as I was jacking it, I was thinking this is probably flexing some independent of this, although who knows, all of it could be moving a little bit. But while this is sort of under tension and being flexed, now might be a good time to put these supports in here. Okay, so I've made my pieces here. This one happens to be channel iron. Again, I'm just using scraps that I don't have to cut a lot off to waste. So that'll fit there, just welded up top, and here on this angle iron. Over here, I had a piece of 2x2 square tubing. I think it's 1/8 or maybe 3/16 wall. That is actually going to go behind here just a little bit. Similar thing. So I'm only going to weld across here and then up here, probably on 3 sides, similar to this side. So I'll weld those and then bring you back and show you what it looks like. All right, those things are welded in. This one is particularly unpretty. This is thinner wall, and welding upside down, I had a hard time getting this. So I'm going to flip this over. Even this one didn't turn out the best because it was upside down, and I'm just not that good of a welder. But this was thicker metal, so this was easier. So I'm going to release the jack, see what happens. Well, I would deem that a success. Let's see, when we had this down, it was 1 inch. Back here, it was 1 inch. Now it's probably 1/4 of an inch. So, significant improvement. Not perfect. You know, not perfect to match the rest of this implement. But it should be good enough to easily mount on the tractor. Alright, so those pieces are all welded in. Much easier to weld this right side up and upside down. Still a little bubble gummy, but I think it'll hold plenty. All right, I have 2 more things to do. So one of my commenters, when I first built this, or maybe just during some of its use last winter, suggested I weld on some longer tines or forks. And to some extent I agree with him. I think he had suggested something a bit longer than I'm doing here, which might have been 1 or 2 feet. So my plan here is it'll extend this about 4 or 5 inches, so I'll have almost, 7 to 8 inches from here to the end. So it'll provide significantly more, almost double the amount of stick out, which is good because it would be nice to be able to move under a log and curl back and pick it up and move it. And I really couldn't do that easily with these short of tines on their forks. So I decided to use 70/18 on this. In fact, I had some sort of by mistake 5/32. Normally I just deal with 1/8. 5/32 sort of maxes out my little Hobart as far as the voltage goes. But this is 1/2 inch thick, 2.5 inches wide bar stock. And this is pretty beefy here that I'm welding to, so there's plenty of meat there to use a high current, I should say current, not voltage, high current rod. And the 70/18 I think is better because this probably will see a lot more force on it than any of these individual plates or other welds that I've done that I use 60/11. So both of these are welded on. I did weld the back side too, I just didn't show it. I ground this because what I should have done was what I did over here, which is not bend the tip, or not weld the tip, because that's where I want to bend it. So I just ground that little bit of weld off. It's not that critical. So my grand plan is to heat this up, and I have this setting on these are fire bricks, about what, 1.25 inches thick, maybe inch thick, I'm not sure. Must be at least 1.25 inches. So I want this to rest flat, because you can see now it's bent down, just like these were. This one's bent down a little bit more. But that's my plan, is to bend these so they're relatively flat. Oh yeah. Rather easy. Hopefully you can see that relatively parallel. Okay, let's do the same to that one, and then hope when I can bend this one up, this will set level right on that block. Well, I achieved 50% of my objectives, which is they're both parallel to the ground, but that one sets a little bit higher. That's the way the cookie crumbles. All right, so that's done. The last thing I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it after I attach the tractor, and since this is setting level, what I want is this to be back up plumb or vertical like it was before, so that the vise is basically horizontal when this is setting flat on the ground. And there's two reasons for that. One is just more convenient to have a level vise when you're using it, and I've primarily for holding a chainsaw while I sharpen it. But the other is that is a good indication of when the tines are parallel with the ground, so they're not digging in or they're not rising up and, you know, sort of poking into a log that I'm trying to grab. So this being vertical provides that good indication, because these will lean forward a little bit. And the other reason for that is I set these forward so that when I am up against a log, or logs are rolling back, or I'm running into them, the logs won't hit that. This should be behind this sort of line between this square tubing or rectangular tubing and that one. So I made out of shown you before, but this is, it said actually this is where this is welded to the rectangular tubing, and it literally just busted. Thankfully my weld didn't break. It was actually sort of at the edge of the weld where it I guess had decent penetration into the parent metal. So what my plan is for this is something else that bent that I got to bend back, is just bump up against a piece of wood, and hopefully that with the tractor, with this on the tractor, and just push it and until this sort of goes back to where it was. So I'm hoping once I close this gap up, that will make this basically perpendicular, make this vertical, and then I'll just re-weld that, and that should take care of that. Well, there it sets. It's off the fire brick now, and it actually sits without rocking. Didn't think it was doing that on the. I didn't think it was doing that on the fire bricks, but there you can see sort of the correction of the angle back to the original. So I'm relatively happy with how that turned out. I mean, it would have been better if this had just easily sort of bent back into shape. It does look a little hack job-ish, but it looks a lot better than it was, which I guess is all I was aiming for. So let's fix this up and then we'll be done. So rather than do my original plan, which was to mount this on the tractor and go find something to push against this, I thought maybe I should give this a try before it leaves the shop. So I can extend this basically all the way back, giving me as much pull this way. What I'm hoping to do is to straighten this up enough, because it doesn't have to go much more. In fact, just sort of putting just a bit of tension on here is actually straightening it up a little bit, I think. This would be nice, because then I can just keep it in the garage here weld it, and then once I take it out of the garage, never to come back, I hope. Rather than bend it and then bring it back in here to weld it again. So this attachment is setting flat on the floor, which is the orientation that I want it to be at when this is vertical. So I guess all I have to do is hopefully I can get that bubble to go to the center. Alright, so the level's at the center now. This is getting progressively harder each click I go, but I'd like to go one more click because I'm guessing even after I weld it, it's going to spring back just a little bit. I'm just hoping something doesn't give way and whack me somewhere. I think that's good. It's a little bit that way of level. I keep burning through the wall. I can't remember, I'm thinking I used rod when I built this, but I don't remember having that issue. I might have used my MIG, I'm not sure. Anyhow, I think I have the voltage turned down as low as I can get it. And still weld. I think I'll try the 6011. I think that has better luck with thinner metal. Yeah, I'm not sure that I mentioned at the beginning where I was going to weld it with 7018 because it was easier to clean up the metal. It looked like a nice place to do welding with 7018, and well, here we go. The 6011 worked a lot better. I was able to close up those holes as well as put another pass on top of it. Doesn't look the best, not as nice as the original weld, but should hold. Let's see. Well, I think that looks fine. I did take up one more click before I welded. That was off camera. So yeah, we're left with it tilted back just a bit, which is fine. Well, to me, that is a great success. As bad as it looks, I'm glad to have that fully functional again. Maybe next summer I'll even paint it. I don't know. Well, time to turn my attention now to the timber part of the channel, which is everything to do with wood, firewood, logging, So I appreciate you hanging along for this video, and I hope you stay tuned for future ones. Thanks, I appreciate it.